With the best will in the world to Mikel Arteta and the season Arsenal served up, thank you for getting out of the way so we can finally talk about transfers. This is the ArsenalVision Post-Match Podcast. My name is Elliot Smith. You can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. Hope everyone is doing well this morning, afternoon, evening, whenever you're actually listening. It is morning for me. It is afternoon for the gentleman I will be speaking to. And it is that time of the year where if you are on a social media platform that has any kind of postings about football transfers, you are going to be exposed to some absolute weapons grade bullshit. So we will try to avoid discussing that stuff and stick to the stuff that we think has some legs, some merit. But then again, it's a little bit fun sometimes to dive into that sea of nonsense and just swim around in it a little bit. So we'll do a little bit of that. Next week, we'll do the season summary stuff. So let me give you a heads up on what's going to be coming ahead. So we still have to do our review of our season predictions and how they matched against the season outcomes. And I think, as you can probably guess, they didn't match. but there were some interesting insights there. We'll do a season review. We'll give letter grades or number grades or letter number grades or something like that. Thumbs up, thumbs down, smiley face, sad face. We'll find some way to rate it. And then what else will we do? We will do overall player evaluations over on the Patreon. Every week we'll do a deep dive on a player from that season. We will do a scouting review. We will probably continue to have SCAC because I can't stop Paul from doing it. But actually people are starting to like that. So there'll be all kinds of good stuff on all kinds of good platforms, and we'll all be together as a beautiful community, which is what this is always about. And here with me now to stop me from talking, to start saying stuff that matters, is the birthday boy himself. And I am worried about his longevity because he is turning 21 today. He might be out on the lash. That actually doesn't mean anything to people in England. See, in America, that's when we are allowed to start drinking. Although some people start doing it before that, which tut. Here with me now is Clive. You can find him on Twitter at ClivePFC. Hello and happy birthday, Clive.
Hello. Thank you very much for your best wishes.
He did his intro and his outro. That's his birthday thing. His intro, hello, and his outro. Thank you very much. And joining me now from CBS, a man I have had the good fortune of sharing a beverage with once upon a time, but who has been ducking this podcast for months, frankly, and has now finally risen to the challenge to speak with us. His name is James Benge, and you can find him on Twitter at, get this, James Benge. Hello, James Benge.
Hi, Elliot. Thanks for finally giving in to me and letting me come back on here. It's been a long time in the waiting, but I'm really glad to be on talking with you guys about transfers, the only thing that matters in the whole wide world.
Exactly. Yeah, it's interesting because I was able to ignore the Twitter DMs and the Instagram DMs and the TikTok DMs and the Facebook DMs and the LinkedIn DMs. But when a lock of your hair arrived in the mail, that's when I knew I got to get this guy on, or it's going to start being pieces of him being torn off. So, I'm glad we finally got here in the end. Okay. Well, I will start with you, James, since you are the guest of honor. Let's talk about, I think, what's getting the most conversation stirred up in the ether, which is the Saliba contract situation. I am pro-labor, as anyone who knows me knows, and as much as they may make millions and millions and millions of pounds, in the scheme of things, players are labor, right? And when players get paid, I think it's a good thing. I think it is good for the players that fund the game, that fuel the game, that fuel our interest, when they're the ones who reap the whirlwind, reap the benefit of the popularity of the game. And so that's a long way of saying pay that man his money, as KGB once said in Rounders. William Saliba is an excellent player. He deserves to be paid. I will get into why I think he may deserve to be paid a little more than you might think he deserves to be paid. But let's start with this. Just how realistic do you think it is that Saliba will sign something this summer and that we can all go into next season not having to talk about this anymore?
Yeah, it's certainly realistic. On the balance of probabilities, I would make it a pretty strong probability. I'm not putting a number on it, but a pretty strong probability that he does sign. It's not, these negotiations aren't easy. They never are at this high level. But I think it's been a long time since there's been a sense of real chaos or fear around Arsenal that Saliba might go. It might happen because the negotiations are still live, and the indications are that it kind of goes back to what you're saying, Elliot, that Saliba and his representatives merely want to be paid what they're worth. He has really settled in to life at Arsenal. From what I hear, he He loves being an Arsenal player. He's got a great partnership with Gabriel. He realises how beneficial this last year has been for his career. And I think he knows that at Arsenal, he's going to have a chance to establish himself as one of the best defenders in the world. And then maybe in 3, 4, 5 years' time, Real Madrid, PSG, someone like that comes calling. And if they've got the money, maybe things change then. But I think kind of all parties there's a belief that the best option is to re-up with Arsenal. That doesn't mean that things can't change. The money, I know it was Mark Irwin reported that he wants money that would reflect him being one of the best young centre-backs in the world.
It shocked Arsenal.
I know.
It shocked them.
It's remarkable. I mean,
player wants lots of money. Shock. Horror.
We've seen this with Saliba, with Van Dijk, frankly, with like a Ruben Dias as well. You can't undervalue centre-backs in the game right now. And I fully agree with you. Of course, Arsenal have to do their best to get a good deal here. But the most important thing is they've got to get Saliba on side. And they know that. Saliba's representatives know that as well.
Yeah, well, so one thing that happens, and look, we're all human. We're sitting there, we're scrolling Twitter, just waiting to get our business done on the toilet. And then a report comes out that he wants shocking wages. And we're like, why should we're Arsenal? Why should we have to pay this young man shock? But first of all, it's a negotiation. And the goal, if you are a good agent, you should push the club as hard and as far and as aggressively as possible to get the best possible deal for your player. Look, we went through this with Saka last summer. He'll give us a discount. He should sign for half if he loves the club. We'll pay him 100 now because he's still got plenty of years left. He can make the big money later. It never made sense. And in the end, what happened? Bukayo Saka waited until the leverage started to tilt towards him from a contract standpoint. His agent did a nice job and got him what it was always going to happen, him staying at the club he loves for a wage that reflects his significance, not just on the pitch, but to the organization globally. And I don't have any problem with an agent or a player doing that because that is literally their job to get the best possible compensation. The other thing that I just want to point out, and Clive, this is the thing where I think people sometimes get it wrong as that's condescending. Let me change it. I think people have an idea that I disagree with about how to look at wages. The idea of he hasn't done anything yet. What's he achieved in the game? Ideally, you should always be paying your biggest wages to players for what they will do in the game. And ideally, what you're not doing is paying the biggest wages to players who have already done their biggest things in the game. Like with Ozil and Aubameyang, as we saw, and I hate to always point to them because they are outliers to some extent, but we paid them massively for what they had done at a time in their career where they were unlikely to be able to do it again. I'll never be upset giving a big wage to a player who already looks to be arriving as one of the best in the game so that we can have them during potentially some of the best years of his career. That's ideally what you want to do. The other thing is player wages set the market. So people say, how can you pay him what Van Dijk gets? He's not Van Dijk. Well, he's not yet. I mean, he's better than Van Dijk currently, but he's not what Van Dijk was. But we see this in American sport all the time, right? A player, a quarterback in the NFL gets a wage, and the next quarterback to negotiate uses that wage as the benchmark, even if that quarterback's not as good, and it sort of sets the market. So where do you stand on this idea of is it a bad precedent to start paying young players this much? Should we be going to a very big level? How much does leverage play into this, given the fact that if we don't give him the wage he wants, we may lose the asset altogether? Because you know what's funny? If you say he should only get 160 and he's asking for 220, it's a couple £1 million a season for an 80 or 70 million pound asset to stay versus potentially leaving for free. Clive, there's a lot there. I've not asked a question. I've expressed all of my thoughts. So it's an A+ episode of the ArsenalVision podcast already. Please let me know what you think on really any topic.
Let's just talk about Saliba a little bit. I think sometimes if you were to say offer him 110 and he was to sign it, that's Ben White old money, right? So what are you really saying? So you might get him to sign it, but you're not really investing in him. You're saying that this is where we see you in the squad. So when like in any of our jobs, when that headhunter calls you, if you're on good money and you've got a good environment, you have a good role, you say, yeah, mate, cheers, thanks a lot, but I'm okay where I am. If you've been shortchanged by your employer, then guess what? When that phone call rings, and his phone will always ring, you will start to listen. So don't shortchange. Don't risk unsettling one of your star players. Just invest in him properly. Invest in him by supporting him with other players to show them that they're signing their contracts. Make sure that he understands that our ambitions are still going forward, and make sure you don't put yourself in a situation where you got to go and spend 6 million on a centre back and then pay him 200 anyway. That's just not good business. And by the way, we're saying all this, and the guys in the mahogany rooms at Arsenal are way smarter than us, and they've made mistakes recently, and they're not going to make these mistakes again. Right? So they'd be absolutely dumb to not realise, particularly where the game is going from a footballistically point of view, how we all understand the value of build-up, and he's got that in his back pocket. He can run. He can do anything you like. He's big, 6'4", weighs 100 stone, but can still move. No one can push him. One-on-one killer. What you're asking for? What literally are you waiting for at 22? He's only going to create an aura that's going to grow. I learned this from you, Elliot, about paying for almost potential. So say that Arsenal, just say it's 160. Who cares? I don't think it should be north of 200 because that takes him into the above Saka level and close to Jesus level. And I don't think that's quite where we should be. It doesn't mean it can't be in stages, So, and it's what negotiation is. So that's my personal view. I just think we have a player that suits our club, and it's not one single Arsenal person that doesn't want him to stay. So the club will get there.
I mean, the tequila chant has to be worth a couple 10, 15,000 extra pounds a week, right? Just so that we can continue to sing the tequila chant.
Clive, let me say with you, 10, 15,000 a week to get them to stop singing this tequila chant.
Okay, I would just want to be clear. That's James Benge saying he has 10 to 15,000 extra pounds per week. So if you're looking for an employer of choice, I would recommend CBS. Clive, let me stay with you just for a second on something though. In terms of the position on the pitch, like one of the debates, whenever a club is determining whether to pay a player at an elite level, the question is replacement value, right? If I have to go out into the market and replace this player, what will I have to outlay and what is the likelihood I can replace them? And there's always debates about this is the hardest position to replace or this is the hardest position. Right now, what do you think the likelihood is that if let's say it's August 30th, he won't sign. He's like, I'm going to leave for free next summer. And we take 70 million from PSG. And it's deadline day and we're scrambling around for the next Per Mertesacker. Like, how do you evaluate? God, that was this terrifying hypothetical I've just crafted. I've got chills. Where do you think center back sits right now for our system and in football generally in terms of a position that would be a challenge to replace and is important to prioritize in terms of his profile?
It's a challenge. Everyone's replaceable, but it's a challenge. If you look at this season where we started, say we're doing this end of last year, his introduction, Zinchenko's introduction, and Jesus' introduction changed all our lives. The how Zinchenko came in, Saliba's assurance and level of comfort he gave us, and the fact we had a centre forward that could take the ball, move, challenge, and run. Right, so that gave us the structure that we were lacking. Right, so so it's very important. When he came out, I don't think we arrived on the right solution. We can say that now based on solutions we ended the season with, which I think were better. Ben White's the closest in our group. There are players out there like Mark Gay and Edmund Tapsoba, by the way, that I think Arsenal have potentially been looking at for a while. They're strong defenders, one-on-one defenders, but I want Saliba to stay. And the mood music is they don't want to go. They're just negotiating. So I'm not really worried, Elliot, I'm not really worried. I'll tell you why I'm not worried. I'm not worried because Arsenal can do no more. It cannot be better than this, apart from a couple of trophies over their head. They can do no more. He is loved within the club, within the fan base. He's got a right balance of partner next to him. He's got people all around him that understand his game. He understands their game. They can do no more. If that player wants to go, then he's not the right player for us. It's as simple as that, and that's how you got to view it. He is not the right player for us. And maybe more importantly, he's not the right person for us, and that is as important. That is as important.
By the way, I will say if we get linked to Tapsoba, James, you're a writer. I'm just going to give it to you. Arsenal go shopping for noodles and rice. Right? I mean, just file that away. You can have that one for free. because soba noodles. Never explain the joke, Elliot. Come on. Well, a couple things there, James. Actually, in terms of can do no more. This is a relationship that once upon a time, an idiot podcaster, currently speaking, said that he felt the relationship was destroyed by certain behaviors of the club. I was critical of the club in terms of the way we managed the loan moves. And look, it's important when you get things wrong to call yourself out. I got this really wrong. I have spent some time talking into this microphone, although I think I had a different microphone at the time, so it was the microphone's fault. Saying that I thought we mismanaged the Saliba situation. And, for example, when we gave his number to Ben White, like I thought that was going to be a problem. Well, now we're in a contract negotiation. I guess you are seeing, again, reports, they could be completely apocryphal, of the relationship is not perfect. I honestly don't see any sign of that at all. But do you think that any of the way that this has developed prior to this season in terms of the extended loans and the number and all of that nonsense, do you get any sense, or even if you don't know specifically, do you have any hint yourself that maybe the relationship was in a slightly bad place due to some of the things that went before?
Yeah, I mean, I don't think you were wrong at the time, and let's be frank, you weren't the only person saying that.
I wasn't the only wrong person, which is good.
No.
Good to have company.
If everyone's wrong, aren't they actually right? That's a philosophical question.
What is truth?
It is absolutely fair to say that the relationship was tense and strained in the years when Arteta came in. I think there was an awful lot of mismanagement from Edu and Arteta. I think failing to sort the years kind of merge into one in the COVID period, but failing to sort him that loan, so he had to spend 6 months in the reserves. I know that was a cause of real frustration. But look, Arsenal's pitch to Saliba would be to, I suspect, would be to acknowledge that, look, we haven't managed you perfectly, but that doesn't mean we can't address that. And we've shown we can address that going forwards. And maybe we should have committed to you earlier. I think they certainly picked the right loan moves as the process wore on. And I think he was a far better player for having spent a year at Marseille and, getting the challenge of playing top level football or for a top club in a lesser league. I think that hugely benefited Saliba. And I'm not sure if he'd been thrown in ahead of Ben White in that season that, the season where Arsenal finished fifth, that maybe he would have been quite as successful as he was from that time in Marseille. The other thing I would say is Arsenal have, over the past 18 months, kind of changed the way in which they manage players and their contractual situation, such that it's not quite so much about ticking clock and we'll deal with you when we're ready to deal with you, but more proactively rewarding performance. Obviously, that hasn't been something they've been able to do with Saliba because they haven't had the evidence base. But just look at Gabriel Martinelli, who was pretty much publicly campaigning for a new contract. He didn't need one. Arsenal had him tied down for a very long time. But they took the view of, you're a really good footballer that we are not paying wages commensurate with your talent. Here's more money. Actually, not many more years. Same with Ramsdale. They could easily activate the option in Ødegaard's contract, and they've got him for 3 years. And you take the view of, well, we don't need to think about Martin Ødegaard's future next season, but he's underpaid versus the player he is. And, if you want to curry good favour, Saliba's agents will know this as well. If you want to curry good favour, you start paying players what you think they're worth. That there is one thing that sort of needles in the back of my mind a little bit going into this summer is the sense that, you go right the way back to when we met in 2019, was it? And then all that Josh Kroenke talk about getting a Europa League wage bill for a Europa League club.
Right. Yeah.
This season was the season that Arsenal had a Europa League wage bill and a Champions League squad. That is going to change really quickly, not just from recruitment, but from paying Aaron Ramsdale, Martinelli, Ødegaard, White will probably happen soon after, starting to pay them what they're worth. That's fine if you keep qualifying for the Champions League, and it's the right thing to do, and it will be noticed. But the era of being able to spend 100 million on Declan Rice and go for a few other players may kind of dry up quite quickly when your wage bill becomes one representative of the second best team in England.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's worth pointing out, though, that Aubameyang's wages, Ozil's wages, Kolasinac's wages, Williams' wages, Pepe's wages. Think about the literal millions of pounds a week that went off the books or are finally coming off the books as late as this summer that will go instead to a raise for Saka, a new contract for Saliba, a raise for Martinelli, for Odegaard, right? These are wages being much better spent. It's not always what you're paying. It's what you're getting for what you're paying. I mean, if you want to pay lower wages, but you wind up with Southampton's squad, you get relegated, right? So your wages should reflect the caliber of player you have. By the way, I think this is one thing that gets overlooked in a wage debate. At some level, it's also like everything in football, just down to talent evaluation. Do you rate the player? If you think Saliba is one of the best center backs in football already and on his way to maybe being at the very top of the game, it'd be silly to argue over virtually any wage. If you think you've got prime Virgil van Dijk or better in your squad right now, that's where he's headed, of course you pay him. If you think he's still rough around the edges and he may not get there and you think he's overrated, then yeah, why would you give that guy $200,000 a week? So at some point, it's always down to player evaluation. One thing that we should touch on, Clive, though, is trust. And I don't just mean trust in players, trust in the manager, trust in Edu. And look, this is going to rankle some people, but trust in KSE. And I only bring it up because look at their other sports properties. Suddenly they look like they get this, like they're making good hire. And it's not, again, I realize those other sports properties are different because they're salary cap leagues. They don't have to just throw money at the problem. But part of being successful in sport, as we saw with Liverpool, is not just how much you spend. It's who you hire. It's how you think about the sport. Can you crack the code? Can you be smarter than the rest of the teams around you? And for the first time, we look at KSE and we see an organization that is thriving in other sports. And this season was pretty good for Arsenal. Do you think that maybe the level of trust should be going up organizationally with Mikel, with Edu, with the whole organization based on what we're seeing happening at some of the other properties?
Yeah, I've never been one to sort of hammer KSE because on what basis am I doing it? Based on things on TalkSport and things like that? It's rubbish. I'm not interested in that type of stuff feeding into my head. What I have done, and maybe what I didn't realise, was how damaging dual ownership was to the club. That was a period where I feel we drifted. And since 2018, was it, when KSE got 100% ownership, there's been a change. Not always been smooth, but there's been a change in approach. And there's definitely been a change since Tim Lewis came on board. That's been a significant change. And there's been a change in engagement and investment. And I think investment and engagement are equally as important. I didn't think fans felt the engagement from the ownership. Now they're more engaged, right? So when you're more engaged, suddenly you get better investment, more aligned investment. And those are things that maybe when we were going through the dual ownership with Usmanov, we didn't realize how damaging that was until we can now look back in hindsight and think, actually, we were not great during that period. We had a guy holding the club up on his own, making decisions which may not have always had the best outcomes or motivations, that left us with a massive wage bill and left us with people at the wrong age profile and just taking money out of the club. Right, so that's changed, right? So that's changed. And to James's point, he did touch on something earlier there, which has been in my head as well. We have 2 years ago, we went young, 22-year-olds, bang, bring them in. They've now developed 2 years later into young international players. Some of them have, one or two have dropped off, like Sambi, for example, haven't quite gone there yet, but most of them have been a success. So now they're getting big boy money, right? So, but I'm hoping. And this is smart business. There's a clause in there that says if we're not in the Champions League, then that money changes. If you don't do that, then you're going back to a situation where we were in with players that are not quite as motivated outside of Champions League, in Europa League, on Champions League money. So why would you do that again? Right? So there needs to be a strong bonus incentive to make sure we stay at the right end of the table. And so this is important, not just to get to this level once, but to be here for half a decade. And how are we going to do that? and that's where my head is at the moment on all our recruitment. I'm sure you get onto that a little bit later.
I'm just going to dream bigger and say I want to be here for 5 decades. That's just half a decade will not satisfy me. I will be angrily screaming into this microphone in 4.5 years. James, I think we can move off the Saliba conversation, which was intended to be the first 10 or 12 minutes of the podcast, and in true to podcast form, we're 25 minutes in or so. Let's do a little bit of a rumor thing. We're going to get to Emile Smith Rowe in a bit, but I want to talk Declan Rice first. We have been strongly linked with Declan Rice for a while now. I still believe it'll happen. There were rumors of Bayern interest. Declan Rice going to Bayern never really felt like a fit to me. And maybe that is a prejudice thing because we just tend to think of young English players staying in England. And they don't always, but it has been sort of a trend. I mean, the allure of the Premier League, staying in London, a top club like Arsenal. I mean, who could say no? But let me just ask you this. Your opinion of the player. Is he the guy you push all the chips in for? It certainly would seem that if we go for him, he will be the big splash of the summer. Is he that guy? Is he, what do they say? Is he him, as the kids say?
He is him.
Oh, good.
I am always very conscious as an English journalist, often writing for an international audience, what the international view is of English assessment of English talent. I know that's quite a wordy way of trying to get my point across, but I think this guy is phenomenal. I know there's been a lot of talk about, is he the Xhaka replacement? Is he the 8? Is he the Partey replacement as the 6? He's whatever you want him to be. I really, really admire and enjoy watching this guy. I saw a lot of West Ham last season in the Europa League, this season in the Premier League. And yeah, if Arteta wants him to be the 6 against, and I think that would be probably his perfect role for me in 90% of Premier League games where Arsenal are going to dominate possession, dominate territory. He's outstanding. He is a brilliant ball carrier. He's got that Partey-esque ability to draw the press and run through it. Equally, I think you've seen this season with West Ham quite often because he has to. He can be the 8 and get into the box, win headers, finish on the rebound. He could do that, and I would love the idea. One of the things I really like about what Arsenal are looking at doing in their midfield business is I can see a world where they're going to the Etihad and Arteta's saying, give me, and I know, Clive, you were going on about this at the end of the season, give me those 2 strong midfielders to protect and shield, and if we come away with a 0-0, that's fine. But equally, Rice is your deep midfielder. Absolutely no trouble there. I think he's been actually quite poorly served by, not necessarily a criticism of David Moyes, it's just the players he has. He's been quite poorly served by the players around.
Go on.
I really like David Moyes. I know that's another unpopular thing to say here on.
I'd like him to be the United manager again, so we can agree on that.
He's a sort of nice footballing uncle who went through some tough times that he can tell you about over a pint. But I think, he's had next to him Thomas Souček, who can't do much beyond get in the box and head the ball, and he's basically been teaching Lucas Paqueta the ropes. It's not a great trio there for bringing the most out of Rice. Arsenal, dependent on who the left 8 is or whether he ends up being the left 8, I think he will fit in like a glove. I know as well that, and I keep hearing this, I keep asking this question over and over again since I think I first wrote about it in February. It's like, is he still excited by Arsenal? Everything I hear is he is. Obviously, there are other clubs that are going to try and make persuasive pitches to him, but Elliot, you laid out the reasons why Arsenal's a great fit for him, and I know this season he's been taken with the idea. So I think this is great. I have to say I've not found an Arsenal transfer this invigorating since Ozil.
Well, I mean, he also could be a European champion as soon as the end. Is that
Wednesday?
Is that next week?
I think.
Yeah, Wednesday. So, I mean, that obviously would be huge to have a Conference League champion in our squad. I kid, but it's a trophy. I think it's interesting, Clive, because there's so many advanced metrics out there. There's expected threat. and there's all kinds of ball progression metrics you can look at, and XG chain. But there's one really simple one: pass completion percentage. And I think there's an interesting thing about Declan Rice. He's elite at a phrase you've taught me: regain, retain. He is one of the most proficient ball winners in all of the Premier League, and he does not lose the ball. He gets it back and he keeps it. And I think what we've seen this season, where we play on the pitch, we need to win the ball and we need to keep the ball. And when we lose a Zinchenko, for example, who's a 90% passer, and we play with a Tierney who's a 75% passer, that little difference, those little dispossessions, or even when Zinchenko makes a brain fart, right? Where we're playing on the pitch, look at Odegaard, right? A couple giveaways in a few games during the run-in that cost us goals. You need a player who is great at winning it back and a player who is strong on it and does not give it away. And that's Declan Rice. And then, oh, by the way, he's got a traction engine for a foot, and he can give you those extra odd goals that, for example, Granit Xhaka gave us surprisingly this season, two of which I enjoyed last Sunday. So do you think that that's a big part of this, Clive, is that the two things we really prize in our football, winning it back and keeping it, are two things that he is absolutely exceptional at doing?
Yeah, I think this is a longer conversation, Elliot, but we all watch football, right?
So, aren't they all with us?
We all watch football, and teams are very organized today. Coaching levels are becoming standardized, and teams know how to do a low block, 4-4-2 low block. They can do that all day. They can go 4-5-1. They can protect the outsides. They can double up on the outside, stop you penetrating there. They've been learning how to protect the half space. We watch stuff. We see data. We watch all the passing maps. But what you can't control is the transition phase of the game. That is the unknown phase of the game. So in possession, you can have your pattern play, which we can all recognize now what Arsenal are doing. Out of possession, you can have your system, wherever you want to be, mid, low block, whatever you want to do. But transition, that's the area, the gold, I'll call it. Defensive transition, offensive transitions. What do you do off the ball? How do you read passing patterns? How do you create mini transitions, accelerations in your team? So having people that can accelerate from a turnover of possession, accelerate into areas, into broken field, that's the uncoachable bit. That's the bit we can't predict. That's the bit when you're waiting for a mistake. And people who can force mistakes, win the ball and drive and carry and create good attacking options. That's the bit. So if you're a coach, you know what you can control. It's the uncontrollable bit you want to get hold of. People that literally take the ball from you and progress it. And the two players we're linked to are elite at taking the ball from you in those central areas and driving. Lose the ball in the centre of the pitch, we know what happens. Martin Odegaard, our player of the season, lose the ball in the centre of the pitch, it's in the back of your net. It doesn't matter if it's Notts Forest or Man City, it's in the back of your net. You can't do it, right? You have to protect that area. So if we lose, we've got ability to catch people, great. But controlling the transitions in the game and creating your own offensive transitions, that's one of our weaknesses. Would you say, when people go a little bit longer, second ball, ball, managing second balls consistently, when teams stretch the pitch out on us, and then creating our own momentums and accelerations. And I've looked at this for a while. So when I looked at it and I went, you know what? This is a bloke at West Ham that does this for fun. This is literally what he does. What he does is exactly what we need. You could just write down a bit of paper and say, what are our weaknesses in that area? And he does all of them. And so my views on him have changed over a period of time, because I realise it's not always about the risk-taking in central areas. And I'm a huge Thomas Partey fan. And I love the way he manipulates the ball, particularly first touch, and clips the ball, no-look passes. I love it, a bit like Thiago. I love that creative player in there. But the game is changing again and evolving again. And it's evolving towards the Declan Rices and the Caicedos because of the structure and the risk-taking in central areas. You have to have this. This is the next phase for us. And this is why I firmly believe, I was on the podcast with Andrew yesterday, I said it, this is the moment to press the button. It is the moment to press the button in here and really future-proof what we're trying to achieve. Make sure in that back five, you're saying to people, our 3-2 build-up, you're saying to people, don't even bother coming in here. Don't even bother. It's no point. You're going to get munched, right? So, and that's the aura that Man City have got right now. You don't even bother getting in there. Yeah. And we're showing people our knickers, I'm afraid, in the outside areas. We are. It's great when it's great. But in April, in the money months, you can't show people your knickers, mate. You got to say, nah, you're not coming in here. If you come in here, you're not coming out in one piece. And I want a few more of those players to make sure we can maintain our play in the, my analogy, Elliot, in the playoffs, right? Because in the playoffs post international break, we've been weak the last 2 years.
It's a great point. I will point out some people make their money showing their knickers, and that's fine too. I do think it is. Look, you should never buy a player. Well, I shouldn't say a player, but you shouldn't buy your star player because of versatility. But it is interesting. You look at like a Ben White, for example. Ben White was bought to be a center back. He was a very good center back. Then we got an even better center back, and Ben White became a right back, and he was one of the best right backs in the league. And Ben White has more than justified the transfer fee we spent on him at 2 positions. I don't think it hurts that Declan Rice can play center back. He said, I'm a center back. Well, that'd be a hell of a center back if you wanted it to be. You can play him in the 6 if you want to be a little more robust. And you probably, playing him at an 8 thing, I think is hypothetical more than anything. But I thought playing Shaq at the 8 was hypothetical, and look at how that worked. So all the positions are on the table, and he'd probably fit all of them. When you buy a player who is talented and physically dominant, you've got a lot of optionality, as the fancy people say, with what you're going to do with that move. Now, I think we will get Rice done, and I think it will move the needle for us. And I've come around a little on this because we did a scouting video. It's on our Patreon. We did a Rice and a Caicedo scouting video. I recommend you look at it. You will. The good thing about the scouting videos is YouTube comps will show you what a player is great at, but they won't show you some of the nuance of the player. And I think what I saw in Rice's scouting video, and you can go judge for yourself, is just that some of those little short-range stab passes. He's a bombastic player in big spaces and open spaces. There's no player like him, and he will dominate them. And he will dominate the way he regains the ball, but he's aggressive. So he's going to go in to regain the ball. Kind of what a Jorginho does, interestingly, in a different way. Jorginho doesn't want to be in a running race back. He doesn't want to shoulder to shoulder. He wants to win the ball early. Rice tries to win the ball early, and he's very, very good at it. Rice also likes to play the long pass, the big switch, the big carry. Those little balls, the little exchanging balls that Partey and Zinchenko do to one another, I think that's a part of his game that can develop. Now, as James pointed out, maybe when you have Souček and a learning Paqueta next to you, that's not your game. So let's just see how it develops. I've come around on the player, though, and I think if that's where we plant our flag this summer, so be it. One place it looks like we're not going to plant our flag is Mason Mount. Now, I have heard rumors, back-channeled rumors with the people that talk to me, and to be clear, those people are mice, that we were close to Mount, that we wanted Mount, that was serious, that link. The data people love Mason Mount, and the data people are never wrong, he says, laughing at the data people. I'm kidding. I love the data people. I count myself among them, but I have diverged from them on Mason Mount. When I watch Mason Mount, I don't see an Arsenal player, and I will admit, if they're wearing Chelsea blue, I struggle to see Arsenal player. I can't get there. But there's something about Mount's game that I think is very end producty, but not very precise in the way that we need to play. I do think, for example, he could be a player for those transitions that Clive described, but I'm not sure he could be a player for 75% possession in the final third. Again, all of this, I could be way, way off. Like I said, the data people love him. It looks like Mount's going to go to United. It looks like it's going to be big, big money. I'm not going to cry any tears over that deal not working out. But for you, was that the perfect piece for the role that Shaq is leaving behind and maybe the alternate role behind Odegaard? How do you feel about Mount and Arsenal not getting Mount, for a position that we are going to have to address?
Which one of us was that aimed at?
Oh, sorry, James. Yeah. James, you. Yeah.
Cool.
Look at the polite guy over. I mean, I'd have 3 guys normally, James, talking into their microphone simultaneously, but you asked politely if it is your turn, and so you are welcome back anytime. Yes, go. Please go.
Just to be certain, I certainly think the Mason Mount of this season, and I think you have to caveat when you describe the Chelsea player of this season, just how hilariously incompetent everything at that club has been, and that is going to make...
he had a bad season, they had a bad season.
Yeah, exactly. That's going to make good players look bad, and there's plenty of bad players there that have been made to look diabolical by everything that's happened at Chelsea this season. I'm kind of with you that I always thought it was a little bit of a weird fit as a left 8 with Ødegaard, insofar as I did wonder if there would be a little bit of wasted talent there. In that one of the great things about Ødegaard is how effective he is at conducting the press. I think one of the few players that might be better than him at that is the Mason Mount of Thomas Tuchel's time at Chelsea.
Interesting.
I thought he was really fantastic at that. Do I want two players as a left 8 doing those things really highly? I mean, these are players that would push high up the pitch. Their other big contributions would be end product. I think one of the joys of a player like Xhaka in that left 8 role, and Gundogan as well, who we all know Arsenal are looking at. We'll see how likely that is. I think the Kovacic
latest Gundogan rumor is Barcelona, close to Barcelona. We'll see.
Yes, but then I have to take everything Barcelona with this gigantic pinch of salt that is, where on earth are they finding the money for that?
Well, yeah, I was just going to say they just sold 4 rows of seats from the new camp, so they're fine now.
You must call it the Spotify Camp Nou.
The Spotify Camp Nou. Sorry,
I have had angry
Daniel
emails
Ek
about
finally
that.
getting his piece of a football club. There you go. Yeah.
I've had angry emails about that. So, I mean, I don't know. I don't particularly know whether Gundogan would happen, but there was a fit of a player that could give you the penalty box production. I think he produces in the penalty box better than so many players in his position, but balance that with a little bit more solidity. A lot of coaches, including Tuchel, tried to have Mount as a 6-8 hybrid, and I always thought that Mount looked more at ease as the 8-10 hybrid that Ødegaard really is. So it wasn't one I was, shouting off the rooftops thinking, get it done. I think there is from a purely enjoyment perspective, there is something I would think quite pleasant about taking a Chelsea player in their prime that Chelsea want to keep, as opposed to getting their cast-offs much too late. But I don't really think you should be making transfer business based on that, fun as it would be. I look at it and think 55, 60, 70 million pounds. It just didn't all fully add up. I don't think it would have been a disastrous move. I just don't think it would be the best profile of player Arsenal could get for that left 8. And it's so important to get that right, because it's the only position right now that I look at in that squad, and with Xhaka out the door, there is no left 8. You need to get a starter quality player in there. So
yeah,
I think Mount isn't the right one.
I think it's a very, very important position to get right for us. Interestingly, so if you eliminate this season and go back to last season, in terms of XG plus XA, right? So expected goals plus expected assists, he was about 19th in the league. But that put him in good company. I mean, just ahead of Bruno Fernandes, just behind Gabriel Martinelli, just behind Jack Grealish.
He's basically a right winger that season. Well, a right winger in a 10.
Yeah,
I'm not. He doesn't play 8 for Chelsea because
no, I don't think he's just something about his play. Like I said, I could see it suiting the transitions. I don't. Well, Clive, why don't you settle the argument here? Look, I don't want to spend too much more time on this so quickly because it looks like he's going to be a United player, not an Arsenal player. But if we were linked, we must have liked him, and you got to trust our evaluation lately. So I'm sure the club will be disappointed to miss out, I would think, if they were genuinely interested. What's your take on this non-transfer?
Yeah, I'm not sure how genuinely interested we were, if I'm honest with you.
Interesting.
And so I've got some thoughts developing here. And I think we will buy 2 centre mids. The 2 that I'd like. They are quite adaptable. And I think we have an opportunity to develop in that position. Develop one of our own, maybe. And I think there needs to be a different construction in the front end of the pitch and the back end of the pitch. So rather than have a Zinchenko inverting all of the time, I don't see any issues with him playing left centre mid from the start and doing what we saw with Thomas Partey on the right back situation on occasions. You could use Ben White to invert from centre back like Man City do with Stones, if you want to. I think the most important thing is you have different configurations in that back 5, that 3-2. Zinchenko can definitely play that left centre mid, right? If you wanted to. Declan Rice always plays left 6 for West Ham, plays the left hand side, Souček on the right. So that's going to be interesting to see what happens to him, and depends again who we buy, right? If we invert Partey from the right back, then suddenly you got your centre mid sitting there, 2 centre mids, Partey and Rice on the left hand side, inverted on his right foot, bagging switches to his mate Saka on the right hand side. I don't see enough difference with Mount to what we already have.
Interesting.
I'd rather see a more, if Arsenal decided to play Declan Rice in that Xhaka position, I'm happy with that. I like the idea of that. I think Rice is underdeveloped, undercoached, and never really had a positional manager to play positional play. You know my views, Elliot. And I think he would thrive once he takes off the West Ham cape off of his back, where he's allowed to do everything he wants to do, has 10 touches before he passes the ball. I was watching Xhaka at the weekend. His one-touch play's gone through the roof. Imagine if Rice was one touch, pinging it, one touch, and then running, which Xhaka can't do. He can't carry over big distances. Rice's carries are massive. So think evolution. We are not going to play the same. We are not going to play the same. And I don't want us to. I don't, because I know this system. I know it really well. We all do. We can write it down in our sleep. And if we can write it down, all the laptop boys, the other clubs can write it down. We have to change. We have to change. We have to be open to it. And I'm having this massive debate. I don't think we'll get into centre forwards. If you are, I'll hold this debate in my mind. If you are, but you know what, it's coming out. I can't hold it. Right. So
can you hold it long enough for me to pay some bills?
Okay, I'll hold it. But come back to you on centre forward. And
I'll come back to you on centre forward. I had it on the list. We also have to get to Emile Smith Rowe, because it's the only reason James Benge came on the pod.
That's part of the discussion. So I'm ready for this.
Okay. That's really good. But you know what else is really good? What else is really good is protecting your browsing history, browsing for the things you want to see. You just heard Clive talk about the laptop boys. I'm going to tell you something. I think we pretty much all have a laptop at this point. We're all the laptop boys and girls, I should mention. And if you are using a laptop or even a phone, you should be protecting your browsing with a VPN. And I recommend NordVPN. In fact, I use NordVPN. NordVPN will let you do a few things. First of all, one of the things that I love that it lets you do is browse in another location. So when I want to watch Match of the Day, I simply browse in the UK. If I'm in the UK and I want to watch, let's say, NBC, because, I have a Peacock subscription, which is a thing that wouldn't have made sense to me 10 years ago, I can browse back in the US. Nord lets you easily jump from region to region. It also protects your browsing. It keeps your history and your IP address private. It has threat protection, so it'll stop malware from getting installed on your computer before you even start. Say goodbye to intrusive website ads as well. Here's the thing. There's a 30-day money-back guarantee, so you can give it a try. If you like it, great. If you don't like it, they'll issue you a refund. Pretend the whole thing never happened, okay? You go to nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. I'm going to double check that. Is that what it is? NordVPN ArsenalVision. Yeah, that's it. nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision to prove that it's true. I just tried it. And here's what you're going to get. You can get a huge discount on a 2-year subscription plus 1 free month. nordvpn.com/ArsenalVision. Do it now. Okay, good. That's one check. Now, I also have to tell you about Shopify. If you are building a website for e-commerce, you should use Shopify. I really should stop there. Nothing else has to be said. It is exactly what you should do. I've done it. I cannot speak highly enough about it. They can help you sell on Facebook and Instagram and TikTok and whatever the other ones are that I forgot to mention. They will help you put videos into your site and pictures into your site, and they will take care of shipping. But where they really come to the fore too is, I think, the checkout process. When it's time for someone to put down their hard-earned money for your merchandise, for your art, for your baked goods, for whatever it is, someone wants to feel that there's a credible, competent person behind that website there. And Shopify makes that checkout process feel competent, feel professional, feel reliable. They have all the security for credit cards and things like that. They will help you with things like taxes and shipping and all that. So Shopify is really the only way to easily and effortlessly create a super professional website. And here's what they're going to do. They're going to let you get a $1 per month trial. So sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/ArsenalVision, all lowercase. Didn't know the internet works that way, but that's what you're supposed to do. Go to shopify.com/ArsenalVision to take your business to the next level today. Shopify.com/ArsenalVision. And finally, last, but, and I stress this, certainly not least, a new sponsor of the ArsenalVision podcast that we are thrilled to have. That is Oakley. Oakley sunglasses. What an iconic brand. I will say this, by the way. Kylian Mbappe wears Oakley sunglasses, and I am reliably told that if you wear them, you will be as good at football as Kylian Mbappe. So, look, that seems like a small price to pay to be one of the best players, maybe in history. Just think about it. But look, I wear my Oakley sunglasses when I'm driving. I love the styles. I love the quality. The quality is really important. I've had a lot of sunglasses. They break. They fall off. They're not put together right. These are high-quality frames and lenses. They use prism technology, which is a special proprietary polarization. One of the things about sunglasses, actually, you need to protect your eyes. We know to wear sunscreen to protect your skin, but people don't realize that the harmful rays that the sun is beaming down on us all the time, it's not great for our eyes. So you want to protect your eyes. Am I getting across to you people? We need to protect our eyes, and Prism technology protects your eyes. Oakley is quality. It is all day wearability. You know what I mean? They look great. Lots of styles. I have two of them. I think the one I have is like HFSM. I can never remember the name of that style, so I apologize. I will look it up and tell you next time. Look, go to Oakley.com. Look up what Prism technology is. Go to Oakley.com, and while you're looking up Prism technology, get some sunglasses. How about that? That you can say, oh, look, here's what Prism technology is about. And then you'd be like, oh, well, it's really good technology, and they have really good sunglasses, and they're really good quality. So, I might as well buy them because, Elliot wears them, and he's kind of a buffoon, but, Oakley's really good. So those two things are trade-off. Anyway, the reason you get them is because you'll be as good as Kylian Mbappe. As I said, that's not really true, but you might look as cool as he is. Look, the most important thing I can tell you is that you should be going and buying Oakley sunglasses right now. How many more times do I have to say it? How many more times do I have to harangue and harass you to please enjoy the wonderful products of our sponsor? I'm done. By the way, I do want to say a lot of people told me at our live event that they wished that the ad reads were longer. I'm going to work on that for the new season. I'm going to work on that. So go to Oakley. Clive, is that enough of that?
Indeed.
Nailed it. I'm going to try to make them longer. I know people have asked for it. All right, Clive, let's head to our Future So Bright, I Gotta Wear Shades portion of the show, sponsored by Oakley. What do we need at center forward, my friend?
I'm going to have this debate with you guys, really, and see what you guys think, because you look at the squad, you're looking at how it can develop, and I tend to look at Man City, and you look at how they've developed over recent years. So they used to have two sprinting wingers in Sane and Sterling, and now they've developed into two controlling wingers in Grealish and Bernardo. And I look at two players that are potentially dropping off the cliff at Arsenal in Smith Rowe and Vieira. If you were to look at, obviously different ages, they're young, but if you look at their profiles, it's quite similar to Grealish and Bernardo as wide men. What we don't have is we don't have a centre forward they can play with. Look at Jack Grealish last year at Man City with the false nine Man City. Couldn't find him, mate. Couldn't find him. Give him a centre forward, he suddenly found his role, the most important player in the team. I'm conscious of systems and players, and I'm looking at Arsenal's two centre forwards, and I think they're very close in profile. And I think it really suits Martinelli and Saka, but we can't keep running them into the ground. And so we have to find another way to play. When Eddie comes in, I don't think our diversity of style in the forward areas is diverse enough. And so I debate on having Elliot, I've been talking about this for 2 years now, I'm the tall forward. But now I'm convinced, and I wasn't even convinced yesterday, but I'm getting more and more convinced as the hours go forward. Because if we are going to develop other players and develop people within the squad in the forward areas, then we've got to give them something that develops them. Because Smith Rowe can't do what Martinelli does. So let's just forget it. He can't. Right? So not consistently. He can do it over short periods of time. But as soon as we lack a sprinter, we all look at it and think, how are we going to get him behind teams? Right? So, but if you have someone who can control the ball, keep possession, which Smith Rowe can do, he's very good at retention of the ball, but also got people he can hit. he suddenly and play off of, bounce off, he becomes a one-touch finishing animal. And that's the player we have to refine. And so I'm looking at finding players that we've invested in. And if you really are serious about your football team, you have to invest in your talent. And that's not by wages, that's by play style. I mean, let's just look up the road at North London at Spurs, right? They've got Harry Kane banging in goals, left, right, and centre. But there's no point if you're giving him Davinson Sanchez and Tanganga and Eric Dyer. And every time he scores a goal, 4 in the back of his net.
Keep going.
Yeah, but that's the truth. You've got to invest in people. The greatest player in our history, Thierry Henry, the back six, look what we gave him. We gave him the back four, which we can all name, and we gave him Gilberto and Vieira in front. Like, go on, mate, do your work. You know, that's what you've got to do. You've got to invest in people by giving them the right profiles. And I'm fast coming around to conclusion. If we're going to invest in these players to find a different way of playing, either we have 4 sprinters in wide areas and be done with it and have this cohesion front 4, or we say, actually, we want 2 controllers, 2 sprinters, maybe another sprinter added, maybe 3 sprinters. And then you say, we're going to play a different way. But that only works if we change the centre forward. And therein lies the debate. Do we lose 2 centre forwards this year in the selling and buy 1 that gives us another way of playing? And I'm coming around to that conclusion, but this could change with a tweet from the right person. I can change my mind.
Thoughts on that, James? You have any response to that?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, I think you might have to change your mind, Clive. It just, at the moment, and we are like June the 2nd, these things go on. We've got another 3 months of this, much to my chagrin. It just doesn't it's not anything and I know I'm not alone, not really hearing anything about looking to shake things up top, which I agree with you. I find a little bit, perverse. I mean, not even just in terms of having that player that's back to goal that Smith Rowe and guys like that can work with. I mean, it's also just, there are so many games where Arsenal, or there could be so many games in the Champions League where Arsenal can get penned in, and at some stage you do just need a guy that you can lump it to. Jesus worked so hard in those aerial duels, Martinelli as well, but it never hurts to have that variety. I am the person that every England squad of the 2010s, even when he was sort of drifting towards the Championship, I was like, take Andy Carroll. You never know. I mean, Arsenal will be going into Champions League games with benches of 12. Having someone in those games because you have a few corners in the 89th minute and you need to hit someone big in the penalty area, it's not the worst thing in the world. I think Arsenal do need 3 centre forwards, and Eddie, Jesus, and someone very different is a good look. I want to talk about Smith Rowe as well. Obviously.
Yeah.
Yes, I do. I said I'm only coming on the podcast because I find this one really interesting. It's something I want to see.
Yeah, let's move to it. Tell me your thoughts. But by the way, I'll just say we were linked to one striker. I think his name was Wahi in France. You see these links that don't make any sense because it's kind of like, well, we have a better player on loan in France. Like, if that's really the interest, you just bring Balogun home, and you don't go buy a less good player from out of the same league. Anyway, just a thought there. So, all right, let's get on to ESR. I mean, free swim, James. What are your opening salvo here? Opening thoughts on the Smith Rowe situation?
Yeah, so obviously there was a meeting last Thursday between Smith Rowe representatives and the Arsenal Brain Trust. And I don't think it would be unreasonable to say that, sort of from what I've heard from people close to Smith Rowe, there's quite a lot of frustration going into this meeting, not just in terms of the lack of minutes, which we all talked about week in, week out, but I think, and this is a question for Arteta in the years moving forward, as much as he has assuaged almost every doubt around him, there is still this way in which he manages where you are 100% in, or it can seem to players 100% out. And I think one of the things with Smith Rowe was there was maybe a sense that he didn't really even know what he'd done wrong to find himself cast to the peripheries. Obviously, coming back from an injury, it's hard, and it was hard for Arteta to break up a winning team. But look, there was from what I was told, quite a lot of frustration there, and that meeting could have gone differently if Arsenal. And let's be clear, Arsenal told Smith Rowe he was staying. That's the angle you'll have seen from David Ornstein. That's what I heard as well. This was less dialogue, more a statement from Arsenal. It's interesting, and I think that's really encouraging for Smith Rowe. It's obviously a boyhood Arsenal fan; he would want to stay, but I do wonder how well. And Arteta has acknowledged this, but how the next stage for Arteta in his man management is being able to keep a squad of 20, 22 happy. Every season it seems to collapse inwards to a group of about 14, 15 players at best that he trusts. Champions League might solve some of these questions. You need a squad of 18, 19, 20. But I think with someone like Smith Rowe, when the talent is so obvious, to run the risk of emotionally losing him, that's possibly the only mark I would have against Arteta this season and last.
Interesting. Clive?
No, I think this is something that's a developing topic. It's quite hard for us to speculate with these. What James has alluded to there about Smith Rowe, I have heard similar things, that there's been a lack of transparency on what's wrong, what I have to do to get back in, and but we can never tell, right? We're not on the training ground. Could be one little word or what communication misunderstood, or things happen, right? And my view on this has always been quite the same. And when I talk to players, I say the same thing. Make yourself impossible to ignore. Just play so well when the opportunities come that you force people to change their minds. Trust me on this. Any manager or any coach will play you if you're shooting the lights out. It's as simple as that. They want to win. They want to win more than any of us. If there's a player that's absolutely ripping it, and he's ripping it more than somebody else, that player's coming in. There's politics, there's money, there's value of players to protect, etc. Chairman's bought player for 100 million. Can you play him, please, Mr. Manager? There's things like that happen in football because you don't want to devalue your assets. These things happen. Let's not pretend it doesn't. But if a player is ripping it, he will get played. It wasn't so long ago that Smith Rowe forced his way into the manager's eye line. Maybe before I even thought he would. But the game's changed, the standards have raised, and what he was doing before is no longer enough at this moment in time. But let's see. England under-21 is playing in the summer, aren't they, James? And I think
yep,
he should get
player,
picked.
I think, in the squad.
Yeah, he should get picked, right? So he might feel valued there. He get his confidence back. I'm the man. Give me the ball. Stick cup in the top corner, and suddenly we get a new player come back in. So he's not on big money area. He's sitting there, one of our own, mate. We got time. We got time. If someone drops 40 mil on our laps, though, Aston Villa dropped 40 mil on our laps. What do you do?
So, a couple of things to say about Smith Rowe. Firstly, I think a fit and informed Smith Rowe can give you some of the things we don't have in the squad in other places. I think he has a lot of nice interchangeability in terms of qualities and characteristics on the pitch that aren't necessarily covered by the other players. You look at Jesus, you look at Trossard, you look at Saka. You might say they're all very different players, but I think they give you similar things. They're interiors, they carry inside, they're dribbly, they're strong on the ball. Their qualities, I think, are analogous. Smith Rowe, he runs in straight lines. He finishes off either foot and with his head, really. I mean, I think he can do that. He's a carrier. He's a straight line player. And I think when we don't have Martinelli, for example, we see how much we miss that. Right? When we try to line up with Jesus, Saka, and Trossard, I think we lack Martinelli's stretching and width. And I think some of the directness of Smith Rowe could be a really nice addition. The issue with Smith Rowe for me is very simple. He just can't be relied upon to be fit and be available. That's not his fault. But I think Mikel Arteta is someone who has a problem with that, who has an issue with that. I have heard it said, and I obviously have no idea whether it is true or not, that he's there have been times when it was felt that Smith Rowe could have played, could have been available and played through something and didn't. Again, that is the kind of thing that I almost immediately regret repeating, only because having no ability to measure
we don't know. We don't know, do we?
It's something that's been said.
Difficult.
But so what I would say, James, is one of the interesting things about players being injured, guys, come on. We've been through this. There is never a better player than the player who's been out an extended period of time. Abu Diaby was a lovely player. Was he ever as good as what we built him up to be? He could have been. I mean, he absolutely could have been. But we don't really know. Like, the one season he played a lot was a mix and match season for him. But when he was out, he became Vieira. He became something unique and extraordinary. Thomas Rosicki, what we turned him into when he was out, right? Santi Cazorla, to be fair, I think he was what we turned him into when he was out. But we've had this history with injured players of starting to elevate I remember when Thomas Vermaelen was out. Oh, we could have won the title if Vermaelen stayed fit. Vermaelen was never that guy. He was never him. So, James, this is a tough one because I think Emile Smith Rowe is very, very talented. We've seen him be our second leading scorer in a season. I think he gives us qualities we don't have without him. But how do you commit to a player who, in that critical Champions League group stage game where he would have started, or in that critical, 1-1 at 70 minutes when you need something to break it open, when you look to the bench and want to see him on it, he's on the training table instead. Like, I think those are difficult players to commit to. Granit Xhaka is always available. I don't think it's any coincidence that Declan Rice is a target, and I'm scared to say this out loud, but I'm going to say it, not only because he's so talented and so young, but he's always available. And we say it often, but it is true. One of the best abilities is availability. So how do you really think about Emile Smith Rowe? Because the potential is clear, but the availability has always been a challenge, and that's something you just can't predict, you can't rely on.
Yeah, so good to see that Declan Rice is now out of the Conference League final. West Ham's
I know.
Biggest game in a generation. I'm sure they will thank you.
Thanks
Elliot.
to me. Yeah.
So
I guess it's unrivaled.
A bit of reporting here, although I think it's all stuff that's out there. There was this is particularly grim. There was basically an issue with Smith Rowe's pubis bone. It is. This was what the surgery was on.
Let's just say that again as clearly as possible. Pubis bone. We're not afraid. We're not afraid of anatomy here on this podcast.
Groinal area. So to speak.
Groinal area. Yeah.
And that was where a lot of these nagging injuries were coming from. From what I was told, there were occasions where he couldn't kick the ball without feeling pain. But equally, it was an injury he played through, and that kind of can contribute to the belief that if you can play through it sometimes, why can't you play through it other times? And these questions happen. Can
I stop you just for a second, James? Because I want to be clear about something. I'm more of the belief that a player with a nagging, persistent injury should not play through it. They should get fully fit. That a player who is not fully fit doesn't give you a whole hell of a lot, and they can make it worse. So I don't want my comment to be regarded in any way as saying he should have played through injury. I was repeating merely something.
And that's what happens, isn't it? That's what you need to do that. And the hope would be, since Smith Rowe had that surgery and came back from the World Cup, and he took longer than Arsenal wanted and that he wanted, because if I remember rightly, he was nowhere near ready after the World Cup. But since then, there hasn't been another setback. I fully agree with you, though. If it rears its head again next season, I'm sorry, you just can't make plans going forward around a player whose availability is questionable. The hope would be that if you fix the underlying issue, that's it. There's no excuses. There's no flare-ups again. We shall see. It has been quite a lot of time that's been wasted with this injury. I think it's one that goes right the way back to when he was first breaking through. It cost him his whole RB Leipzig loan. Cost him a lot of even that season where he was Arsenal's second highest scorer. So this is the make or break moment for him, I guess. If he's fully fit, we need to see it. We need to see that player of the first half of 2021 to 22 for a whole season. And then, like Clive was saying, you can't drop him then, can you? Well, maybe you can, but if you can, it's probably because Martinelli or Vieira or whoever is playing even better.
It's tough too, because I think there are certain players you just can't afford to lose. I don't know if Smith Rowe is in that category quite. Like,
Yeah,
we sold Iwobi, we got better. We sold Joe Willock, we got better. Not because those guys left, but my point is more, we didn't suffer for losing them. We actually improved each of the subsequent seasons, right? Like, so, and they made room for players that needed to have room to thrive. Like, Bukayo Saka is not where he is in his career right now. If Alex Iwobi had stayed at Arsenal, I believe that. But look, I have to admit, I think Smith Rowe's in a different talent level. Jack Wilshere, though, is probably the best teenager not named Cesc Fabregas I've ever seen play for Arsenal. And we waited a long time for Jack, and it never happened. And we probably held ourselves back waiting for Jack. And if you're ever going to wait for a player, you wait for Jack Wilshere. Is Emile Smith Rowe in that category? Can we afford to keep waiting for him to arrive, Clive? And arrive fit?
Hey, look, I think it's. I'm not as dramatic about this. I just think he has had this.
I'll play dramatic music under your segment just to prove you're dramatic about it. I'm going to do that.
And this has been going on for a number of years. And again, you're never quite sure what goes on behind closed doors. Maybe he's wanted operation for quite a while, and Arsenal wanted him to rest through it and play through. Right, these things happen. Right, people have different advice, etc. I don't know. I'm getting to speculation. Well, all I know is on a football pitch, he needs to be fitter, look better. You know, I've watched him come on this year, and he hasn't said to me, "You have to play." So everything that you're saying are based on memories. And I've seen them. I've seen his recent games. I've seen when he has been our best player. I've been our most inventive forward. I've been in the stadium and watched those games. So I've seen his highest moments at Arsenal. I've seen them. And he's not close to that at the moment. And so step one, let's get close to that. Let's start moving like you used to move. Because you're not moving like you used to move right now. That's clear to me. You know,
Will he ever? What about the change in his body?
Well, why not? Why
he's
not?
big. He's like bigger now, isn't he?
He's a big boy. He's a 6-foot lad, and he's got big muscles. So he's going to have to change his game slightly. He's going to have to adapt his game, you know. And
it's been a problem for me.
Well, Jack Wilshere, you know, he didn't adapt his game when his burst went. He still went into challenges with no regard for human safety, right? So, and it cost him, right? So Smith Rowe's got to adjust his game, but he needs time on the pitch to adjust his game, to find his role. So first thing first, get some time on the pitch playing for England, hopefully. Keep yourself fit over the summer. Don't pop off to Marbella. No, stay in training, right? Get yourself back. So when you come back, you are ahead of Reece Nelson. Let's start there, shall we? Because Reece Nelson looks pretty sharp to me. You know?
Yeah.
Trossard's come in and now taking his role and taking his minutes. You have to deal with him now, Emile. You've got to deal with him. And last time I looked, he's got 10, 11 assists in his time on the pitch. And he can play in multiple positions on the left and play false 9. He plays on the right wing. He's taking his minutes. So now you've got to deal with him. How are you going to deal with him? By being not fit, not sharp? You've got to be fit. You've got to be lean. You've got to be ready to go. And that's the environment that we have. And I'm afraid I know there are lots of people I really, really respect about football, and they love this player. And they love him, and I do, and certain other players. So, and they try to find a way back for them. It's just natural when you have your favourites. You want to find a reason why it's not happening. I do it. I do it myself, you know, and he's someone I struggle to see, and I can't see him in the team yet. Apart from my centre forward scenario, is he going to be our Grealish? If he is, we got to change our forward lineup. You know, and that's potentially where he could be.
Yeah. It's tough too, because I think he's at a stage of his career where he needs to start playing every game. He's going to have to work his way to that point at Arsenal. There's no way this season he gets 25 starts, 30 starts. It's not happening. But he's also at a point in his career where you got to stop having loans at some point. You know what I mean? That's just it. And so my instinct would be, if we want to keep Smith Rowe, loan him out, because there's no Europa League. What's he going to play? 20 minutes of a couple Champions League group stage games, start one League Cup game, start one FA Cup game, maybe. And then if he's really good in those, he can buy himself 10 minutes here and there. He needs a season of playing. So it's a really tough make or break moment in his career, because if you're going out on loan at this stage of your career, that you're not really on track, are you? If there's a good offer for him, he hasn't put himself, let's put it this way, into the category for me of a player who, if he goes, it damages what we can achieve. Because we've just kind of moved past him. It's sad, but we have moved a little bit past him. Having said that, I think on his day, his talent level is such that if we can find a way to develop it, we would be a better team for it. But there's a lot of speculation in there. I should make the point, by the way, because we didn't say this on the Saliba front. I'll just touch on this quickly. I'll come right back to you, Clive. We didn't talk about the back issue. You know, and I will just say, much like I'm saying with Smith Rowe, if you're about to give someone 220 grand a week or 200 grand a week or 180 grand a week because you think they're at the top of the game, you better be sure they're not going to be on the training table half the season, every season, because of a back issue. And back issues, they can be really persistent in big men. Sorry, but Clive, finishing up on the Smith Rowe topic there. And my point about him playing.
Something that Andrew said yesterday, and I really agree with him. You're looking at players like Kieran Tierney. They look disconnected from the group. They don't look very happy. You look at Saliba, he looks connected to the group. I look at Smith Rowe and I think, you look connected sometimes. Sometimes you look disconnected. So he falls in the middle. And if you listen to what James said earlier, acutely as I did, he said, Arsenal told him you were staying. He didn't say that Smith Rowe really wants to stay. You know, and so there's.
I didn't say he wants to leave.
He didn't say he wants to leave either, James.
So,
but you see what he said? Arsenal told him you were staying, and that's what he said, and that's what's out there. And so there are scenarios within that statement that could easily develop based on offers, confidence of a player, how content a player is. So let's just hold our thoughts on this one. We're in the realms of speculation, but my mind is open. You know, but on the football side, I've made it clear what I think he could be. So
I'm looking forward to going on Twitter later today and seeing the aggregator sites. Emile Smith Rowe hates Arsenal, wants to leave. James Benge via ArsenalVision Podcast. Looking forward to those tweets coming out from the aggregator.
It's my favorite time of the year.
It is the best. It is the best time of the year.
Terrified to speak.
I don't know that he can. This is an interesting one though, and it is tough because the emotion around it probably clouds the logic. Like if he wasn't an academy player, I think there'd be a lot more shrugging of shoulders. Like, yeah, we've seen some good things from him. If he goes, he goes. Because James, I think one of the frustrations people have, right, is Vieira got chances Smith Rowe didn't get. You know, there's this hierarchy. By the way, to the point of him being connected, I was at that Bournemouth game, as I say 3 to 4 times every podcast. And one of the people celebrating the most fervently and enthusiastically with Reece Nelson was Emile Smith Rowe. And it was great to see. But what are your thoughts on that player, on the Vieira? Because I think there are a lot of people that think the chances Vieira got were too numerous and should have gone to Smith Rowe. I think Vieira has been misunderstood. I think he's better than people have labeled him. I think the Southampton performance upset people, although being a goal down early changed the temperature of that game and changed the challenge of that game in a way that I don't think suited him particularly well. We spent a lot of money on Vieira. When you do that, you tend to invest in him, especially when he's a player the manager bought versus an academy player that the manager's made some pointed comments about. But do you see those two as a 1-for-1 competition in the squad? And how do you think about Vieira in that context?
Yeah, I do think in the end, it's hard to see an Arsenal where both Vieira and Smith Rowe prosper long term. And look, you know, Vieira's Mikel Arteta signing in the same way that every signing is an Arteta signing.
Mm-hmm.
To be honest, I'm one of those people, I have to confess, that struggle to understand Vieira yet, because, you know, I see talent with the ball at his feet, but watching him, I can find a little bit frustrating, overwhelmingly, just because I look at the player, his body type and how he deals with challenges and physicality, and I wonder, is that ever going to be the level that is required for the Premier League? He looks, and this, you catch yourself thinking, look, you can be lightweight and be effective. You know, Bernardo Silva proves that. but it becomes an awful lot harder if you can't win any of your duels. And I think that's why supporters find him frustrating, isn't it? It's not just that he can't win them. He bounces off. It's a bit like having a Victorian chimney sweep in midfield. It's not a great physical profile. And when we look at how Man City have improved this season by becoming bigger, taller, stronger, steal your lunch money team, I would worry that Vieira could get bullied without a growth spurt, without putting on some muscle mass. Equally, and I think maybe the frustration is he was at Arsenal a year. We've seen players like a Smith Rowe who came back looking huge. Maybe Arsenal's coaching staff and physios don't want Vieira to get that big, but he did seem like he hadn't adapted to the physicality of the league. Totally entitled to more than a year to do that. But that's where my worry is, because I know it sometimes can come across as reductive, but I struggle to see many players in the Premier League. You have to be outstanding technically and outstanding in your understanding of space, which Vieira on occasion only is because he was kind of trying to find the spaces where he wouldn't get the ball. You have to be so good to make that a success. And I haven't seen it yet. I really hope I get to it. He's one of the players I'll be watching the most closely in pre-season, but £40 million is a lot of money for a player with a sort of physical issue that I personally think makes it really hard to be successful in the Premier League.
The latter point, I think, is really the one that's going to wind up maybe being a decider here. What the Saliba thing last summer taught me, though, is to never completely rule out any development in the relationship between player and club, because it goes in directions you don't predict. I really thought it was a very safe prediction, thinking that Saliba and Arsenal were maybe at too far apart in terms of the way things had developed. And I couldn't have been more wrong. So, we keep hope alive for Smith Rowe. Let's finish on this, Clive. Outgoings are going to be interesting, maybe as interesting as incomings. You want something different at center forward. Right now, what we have different from Jesus and Trossard is Nketiah. Nipping at his heels in France is renowned American striker Flo Balogun. I don't think there's room for all of them. I don't think Flo Balogun wants to be the other guy. How would you handle that? If you were Edu, so, imagine you're out barbecuing right now, post Instagram photos of you barbecuing out and about. If there was the opportunity to move on Nketiah and try to make room for Balogun, is that a move you would make? If you could move on both and try to bring in a totally different profile, are either of those guys at the level we need to take the next step that we want to take?
Yeah, I'm not sure. I'm not sure, if I'm honest with you. If I said to you right now, our front three are out and we have to go into a game with Trossard, Nelson, and Nketiah, then would you have the same confidence?
Who are we playing?
If
it's Spurs, no problem.
So we need a situation where we have a configuration that's different in that front six, right? So my thoughts here, Elliot. I think, hey, look, the way I see it going is I see us investing in the centre mid and maybe particularly in defence and maybe one attacker. And I think that should be a stretcher, a sprinter that penetrates to allow us to rest our 21-year-olds. But then next season, I see Arsenal, if they're in Champions League in particular, breaking their transfer record for another forward. And whether that be the forward of the period, of that moment, you can try to project forward and you can look what's happening around the world. You can look at Kolo Muani coming out of Germany. You can look at Evan Ferguson at Brighton. What's he going to be like in a year's time, potentially? Is he going to be the next sort of Harry Kane style centre forward? You're gonna have to project really and see what's gonna happen there. But that's how I see it potentially developing. I would like to see something different in those areas, and I'm not afraid to sell. But Arsenal like Eddie, and I see them persisting with it. So. And that's where I say I don't think it's much of a discussion trying to say that, because I think the mood music has been, we like these players, we want to persist, and My personal view is I want to see more. I want to see something slightly different there. But we'll wait and see. It doesn't have to be a target man centre forward. If you offer me Marcus Rashford style centre forward, that's the style of forward I like. Wing forwards that are strong. It doesn't have to be a Giroud type centre forward for me. I like wing forwards. I just want to see something different to what we already have.
I got a bone to pick with Andrew about Giroud. Maybe I'll do it offline, but he made a positive Giroud comment on the last Arscast. The Arscast that just came out.
Yeah.
And I was screaming at my listening device. Now I know what everybody goes through. So I'm gonna reach out to Andrew on that one.
No, we had a discussion about you, mate, on soft factors. Don't worry about it. He's ready for you when you're ready.
They don't exist, as I've always been clear. They don't exist. I've come around. I've softened, so to speak. Happens with age. It's okay. There's medicine for that. So, James, we'll finish on that. But I think it's interesting, right? Because you look at like a Liverpool team that we lionized, the squad they built to go challenge for Champions Leagues and challenge for Premier Leagues. And then you look at some of the players who are in it, and they've got a Divock Origi. They've got a player like that that maybe people don't rate all that highly, but who comes in and plays at critical moments. They've got a Naby Keita. Well, to be fair, I once thought Keita might be the best midfielder in the world once upon a time. So, so did Liverpool. I think my point is that it depends what a player is happy with. If Nketiah is happy to play 700 minutes in a season, but they might be critical minutes and he might win you the Manchester United. Like if all we got from Nketiah was the winner against United, everyone would be thankful. The problem is we got a couple other starts that didn't go so well. And that's really the issue, right? Is what role are they happy with and what role would they accept? I get the sense that you might be able to keep an Nketiah happy in this group with what he does. Maybe that's way off. I don't know. I don't get the sense Balogun, just by the mood music, would be happy with that. So how would you handle that situation? Move both, replace, keep one, move one, keep both, keep everyone, have a 47-man squad, pay everyone £1 million a week, solve world hunger, poverty?
I would like, if I were Edu, I would be pretty open to moving both. I think the question that sort of underlies it, though, is a little bit, and Clive referenced this here, what comes around in 24-25? Will there come a time when, I know this is perverse because Gabriel Jesus has changed Arsenal's ceiling massively, but he's not the best centre-forward in the world, and he may not be the best centre-forward in the world next year. And I mean, maybe Arsenal can't afford and will never be able to afford an Erling Haaland, but will a time come, you need to keep spaces and room in the squad to grow. And if you went out and bought a Rasmus Højlund, Kolo Muani, whoever, does that then limit your ability to develop and get the ultra top tier, top 3, top 4 striker in the world if that opportunity presents itself next season? It seems to me Nketiah is fairly relaxed with being what I think we should say is second/third choice. We're going to see a lot of Trossard as a centre forward next season, and
I hope Martinelli.
Yeah,
I'd like to see that.
I'd love to see that, and I mean that is different. And if Trossard and Martinelli are starting together, who really is the centre forward there? It will change every 5 minutes. Balogun, it's just been a huge success for the Arsenal Academy, but it's just a great moment to sell. Let him be the star, and get great money for a player who has had a really good season, but I don't even think many at Arsenal would project as ever having a ceiling that's like, God, we should never have sold him. So I think you do need to keep your options open maybe and just find that guy that can get some minutes coming in for Saka, but maybe can get some minutes coming in for Jesus as well. We all forget that Jesus' best form for City was as a right winger. So versatility and room to grow need to be factored in. This is a long-term push to eventually dethrone City, or at least hope you find a season where City are injured enough that you can sneak in.
They win the treble. Pep retires. The Premier League docks them 40 points. Arsenal win title upon title. Look, I do think it's worth pointing out. I don't think a team has won the Premier League in as long as I can think of, without having, if not the best player in the league, a guy who has a case for being the best player in the league. And you can go back as far as you want. Arsenal certainly did it. Manchester United won that one last title with Robin van Persie. Painful as it may be to remember. I think Kevin De Bruyne has been somehow underrated, but every season City has won it. He was right there as one of the players of the league, players in the world. And then Haaland, obviously, this season. Mohamed Salah was one of the best players in the world when Liverpool won it. Do we have that guy? That guy who can, it is the case that, it pains me to say it, but Spurs got kind of close to doing some special stuff because of Harry Kane and no other reason. Do we have that? Is Saka going to grow into being that guy? Is Martinelli? Maybe it's Odegaard. But I think if we're not going to buy that guy, and buying that guy is increasingly very hard for our club, because as big as we are and as much money as we have, buying the Mbappe, buying the Haaland is still probably one step beyond what we can do. I think for us to go on and do what you're saying, it's not going to just be what we do in the market. One of these guys, or all of them, Martinelli, Odegaard, Saka, one of them is going to have to go on and become De Bruyne, Salah, that level. So that when games are tight, they do, like, look at what Saka did against United in the home game. Sometimes, no matter how good you are, someone's got to pull something out that just takes your breath away. We've seen so many Arsenal players down the years that could do it. Alexis could do it. Robin van Persie, Thierry Henry, Dennis Bergkamp, right? We can name all the names, but I think one of these guys has to go on to become that level for us, and that may be the last piece. I think we should leave it there. 90 minutes on a Friday. I think one of the best pods we've ever done, aside from James dropping the bomb that Emile Smith Rowe wants out of Arsenal, which I hope the aggregators caught on to. We will leave it there. Thank you so much. We love you so much for being here. It really is the pleasure of a lifetime to have this podcast, this community, and to meet people and share this together. So Clive's on Twitter at ClivePFC. Happy birthday, Clive.
Thank you very much.
James Benge is on Twitter at, get this, James Benge. Thank you, James Benge.
Thanks so much for having me.
My name, unfortunately, is Elliot Smith, but you can block me on Twitter at Yankee Gunner. As I keep saying, we love you, and we will talk to you after Arsenal 10 transfer window new.